Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons is the first 1 p.m. game that we will start with here. I think Seahawks are really wanting to come out with a win in this one. Not that the Falcons don't, obviously, but it's a team that lost to the New York Giants at home. It's a team that's just, in my opinion, we saw some of the frustrations on the sideline with them last week as well. And so this is just a group that I think is really, really needing a win, and they're going to be focused and they're going to give the Falcons their absolute best, even as the road team here. What's your matchup that matters, Carmen?
I think you and I have the same one, but I think there's actually a lot of things to go along with this matchup, which is just simply the Falcons' defensive line against the Seattle offensive line. We know that the Falcons have just struggled mightily to affect the quarterback, to get any sort of pressure. They have just 5 sacks this season. That is a league low. They make up for it a little bit in coverage, but this defensive front is just not being effective. And we've seen Geno Smith when he's not under pressure. He has the 6th best passing grade, according to PFF. So you have that, but then you also have an offensive line in front of Geno that's not really doing him any favors at this point. I do think it might be a little bit inflated, given that, so they've allowed 99 pressures, which is, I believe they lead the league in that. But I think it's a little bit inflated just because of how many times the Seahawks are asking Geno Smith to drop back and pass. He leads the league with 277 pass attempts. He's got 307 dropbacks, which is the most in the league as well. So you do see a little bit of an inflated number when it comes to the pressures allowed by this offensive line, given just the volume with which Geno Smith is being asked to throw the ball. I do think it's still not a great stat that the line is letting up this many pressures, given that Geno has the 11th fastest time to throw. So it's not as if he's sitting back and holding the ball and making things tough on his offensive line. That needs to get better, and they're going to have an opportunity against this Atlanta defensive front that just hasn't been able to bring pressure. But on the flip side of that, if Atlanta can bring pressure, that's going to spell a really hard day for Geno Smith.
Yeah, I agree. And I can flip it to the other side, actually, for another matchup that matters, because I think the opposite side of the trenches means a lot as well. On this very show last week, we talked about, or I brought up how Kirk, we think that he is just a natural at dealing with pressure, that even though he's not super mobile, he knows when to get rid of the ball. He knows where to go with it. He knows what his hot reads are if there is pressure there. This season, 7 turnover-worthy plays when he is pressured. I mean, that's one of the most in the NFL, if not the most in the NFL. I haven't checked since it was last week, but that is still a formula for him, is if he is pressured, he is putting the ball in harm's way. Now, the matchup that matters is the Falcons' offensive line versus Seattle's, I should just say, pressure package or pressure plan, however they want to come at them. Because last week, I get it, they were playing against the Carolina Panthers. Carolina is not really great at getting after the passer, but Chris Lidstrom, 89.0 overall grade. Matthew Bergeron, 82.4. Caleb McGarry, 80.5. Newsome with a 78.7. Matthews with a 72.2. Like, this is a really good offensive line performance last week for the Atlanta Falcons, and they're going to need it again, I think, because when you look at the Seahawks, their pass rush win percentage as a team is lower. It's in the bottom half of the league, but their total pressures generated is 11th. I wonder if they're going to try to dial it up a little bit more, because when you look at total blitzes that they have, they're ranked 15th in the NFL right now at total blitzes called on pass rush opportunities. But when you look at total pressures when they have blitz, they're almost a top 10 team. So it is something that I wonder if they're going to lean a little bit more into to try to overwhelm the Falcons' offensive line, really dial up that pressure. And I think that could be an area that is a big-time matchup that matters, because, Kirk turns the ball over a couple of times. That could be all that you need there. And I'll kind of weave that into my plus factor, because you brought this up a little bit. Geno Smith deep ball in this game, I think, is going to be a pivotal part of who ends up being on top on the scoreboard when it's all said and done. Geno Smith, you mentioned all the total attempts that he has. He's passing the ball a lot. They're asking a lot of this dude. On throws of 10 or more yards down the field, Geno Smith, he's 2nd in total attempts. He's 6th in total big-time throws, and he's 9th in passing grade when he is targeting players deep down the field. Now, on the flip side, the Falcons secondary, bottom 5 in the NFL at receiving, and when I say that in bottom 5, I mean, like, that's like not a good way. Not like, okay, they've given up the least. They've given up some of the most. Total receptions allowed, completion percentage yielded, and forced incompletions with those throws of 10 or more yards. So they're kind of getting their hands on them, but man, they're also letting a lot of those be completed. It felt like that was also a big point of contention with like DK Metcalf when he was pissed off. He's like, hey, like, give me the ball deep downfield, give me something to work with, all this kinds of stuff. And so I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to want to push the ball deep down the field. And the Falcons have given up a lot of passes of 10 or more yards down the field. So it feels like, Falcons are favored in this game. Feels like it should be kind of a game that the Falcons win. I don't know about that. I might be taking Seattle as my dog here of the week. But what about you? What's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I do want to reiterate with this, there's problems all along the Atlanta defense. And I have the Atlanta secondary as kind of my plus factor because of all the things you just said about, can you be a little bit more effective in coverage? Can you limit those explosive plays? Can you get takeaways? They are middle of the pack right now with 7 takeaways on this season. And when you have a front that is failing to get pressure, it's not for lack of trying either, which I want to kind of reiterate and hit and drive it home, because the Atlanta Falcons are tied with the Buccaneers in blitz rate. They have the 7th highest blitz rate in the league, and yet they have just 5 sacks to show for it. That is an abysmal amount of production out of a defense that is supposed to be more aggressive. And then you need, if that doesn't work up front, then that places a lot of stress on the secondary, which is why you see some of these passes and these throws connecting down the field, because as aggressive as the secondary wants to be, when you don't have the help of the front, it just is, it overwhelms them, quite frankly. And it's pretty easy to do so if you're throwing the ball down the field. So can you take the ball away a little bit more? Can you be more aggressive? Can you get more of those forced incompletions down the field? Can you lock up that last level of the defense as a way of helping this defensive front? This defense is just not working together in the way that I think Raheem Morris has probably envisioned it. And that's going to be a really big determining factor. And I think that if these DBs can step up a little bit more, that is going to be a really big plus factor for Atlanta.
We got some people in the chat. Somebody's asking if they should start Geno over Mahomes in fantasy. I think so. Not that I'm saying that Geno's a better quarterback than Mahomes, but when it comes to fantasy numbers, again, I think this is right for a handful of big time throws.
We'll get to how good Patrick Mahomes is against the Niners, though, when we get a little bit further and preview that game. I don't know that I would make that decision, Trev. It just being totally honest.
All right, now you got to watch to the end of the show. That was good. That was good on you. Now you got to watch to the end of the show. By the way, Dave Sofaro, our do everything dude, but also researcher when the show is going on, said most interceptions when pressure this season. I mentioned Kirk Cousins, one of the highest. He's got 5. Ironically enough, Geno Smith has 6.